Hello, I'm sure all of you who've listened to my blogs about my love of Panzer Dragoon and my excitement for Crimson Dragon would like to know what I thought about the actual game. And I really, really enjoyed it. I loved it. But I don't think it really quite lives up to the Panzer Dragoon series. Which I'll talk about in a bit, but first I'd like to talk about the idea of games as a service and reviewing something that's in flux. So one of the interesting things about Crimson Dragon, well, it got pretty poor reviews. I think a lot of that stemmed from the fact that people felt like it was challenging for the purposes of pushing the microtransactions on you. Um, so the developer changed the balance after the reviews, but before it was released. So basically, the version I played wasn't the same as what was reviewed. So it's difficult to say if I would have had the same complaints. But yeah, so it's just an interesting trend in games as they become easier to update. Is what does a review mean, and when is a review valid? So it should be interesting to see how things like that are handled. Because I mean, to some extent, it can be frustrating if you change something and the review that doesn't incorporate those changes is still what people are basing their decisions on. So that's just sort of an interesting point with Crimson Dragon. But why don't I talk about why I felt like it didn't quite live up to Panzer Dragoon? And I think there's a few reasons, and I think one of the main reasons, at least for me, is that there's a bunch of other characters, and there's a hub world, and uh, I just liked the isolation, the almost how alienated the characters in Panzer Dragoon felt. Well, there were very few characters, which was probably just because, hey, we're on the Sega Saturn, rendering characters is tough, but you really felt like the world was alienating you. Everything in the world was out to get you, and that, there were maybe a few survivors that could handle this harsh world, but they were really far between. And I guess there was sort of like an enemy civilization. Was trying to do something with towers and whatnot, but I don't know. I really like just sort of the bleakness of being alone rather than being on a team trying to fight these alien creatures. And I think they really did an amazing job with the art design, because that was sort of one of the main appeals, is just how sort of alien and unique and lifelike the world felt, and they still captured that. And while it may not quite be up to the Xbox One bar of quality, I think they did a really good job with that. There were other things, like they had these missions where you had to collect oh, what are they called? Uh, beacons. But the problem is that's a really bad mechanic for a something on a rail, because essentially you don't know where the rail is in relation to the beacon. So you can think you're positioned correctly, and then the rail moves, and then you miss the beacon. So I found those a little frustrating. And there's a lot of objectives and UI and things like that, which, again, this is probably more my personal preference, but I like sort of a cleaner, simpler design, and that's one of the things we're trying to do with Neverending Nightmares. And that was one of my other complaints, is in the hub world there's upgrades, and I like the evolving your dragon and stuff, but there were a lot of things, like, I don't know what they were called, I barely paid any attention to them, like tonics and all these different items and things, and honestly, I never found the microtransaction menu. I guess you know, I just didn't dig it deeply enough, but I didn't. I never ran into it at all. I played on casual, but yeah. So certainly I can't make the same complaint. I feel like, you know, if microtransactions were a part of it, they were definitely very very a very very small part. Um, but yeah, I think the storytelling. Yeah, the story was interesting-ish. I don't know. I mean, like, the stories in the other Panzer Dragoons were sort of told through fragments and you know, left sort of cryptic and open to interpretation. And while there's some, I don't know, maybe it's open to interpretation, or maybe it's just confusing, the ending of Crimson Dragon. I don't think it was quite as good as Panzer Dragoon. But I mean, again, I loved the game and really enjoyed it. So, um, you know, I didn't feel the same way as reviewers. But again, I'm the biggest Panzer Dragoon fan in the world, so that might explain why. So, thanks for watching.